morning, everyone. This is the Committee of Public Property and Public Works. Welcome to Philadelphia City Council and the Committee of Public Property and Public Works. I now note that the hour has come. Mr. Cameron, will you please call the roll to take attendance of members? Members that are in attendance will please indicate that you are present when your name is called. Also, please say a few brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on screen when you speak.
Councilwoman Lozada.
Present.
Vice Chair Squilla. Member Gautier.
Present.
Member Driscoll.
Present.
Member Harity.
Present.
Member Young.
Present.
Thank you. A quorum of this committee.
Oh,
Don't worry, I got you, Kendra.
and we're recognizing Member Brooks as a guest.
Thank you. A quorum of this committee is present, and this hearing is now called to order. This is the public hearing on the Committee of Public Property and Public Works regarding bill numbers 240187, 240383, 240303, 240370, 240423, 240425, 240431, 240435. Mr. Cameron, will you please read the title of the bills?
Starting with Bill number 240187, an ordinance amending Chapter 16-700 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Philadelphia Land Bank to allow interested parties to require open bidding when the land bank seeks to exercise special authority to acquire property at a sheriff's sale and allow prior owners to redeem property when such special authority is exercised, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 240383, an ordinance authorizing the city's chief innovation officer or their designee to enter into a cable television franchise renewal agreement with Verizon Pennsylvania LLC, renewing the cable television franchise granted by the city to Verizon for franchise areas 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the city, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 240435, an ordinance authorizing the Commissioner of Public Property on behalf of the city to acquire fee simple title or a lesser real estate interest to all or a portion of a parcel or parcels of land situated at 121-25 East Shelton Avenue, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 240303, an ordinance authorizing acceptance of the grant to the city of two certain areas located on either side of Hunting Park Avenue, east of Whitaker Avenue, as slope easements under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 240370, an ordinance renaming and designating the property commonly referred to as the West Oak Lane Library, located at 2000 East Washington Lane, as the Dwight Evans Library of West Oak Lane in the city of Philadelphia. Bill number 240423, an ordinance authorizing the Commissioner of Public Property on behalf of the city to acquire fee simple title or a lesser interest in real estate by purchase, dedication, donation, condemnation, agreement in lieu of condemnation, or otherwise, in parcels of land along the Schuylkill River and the Wissahickon Creek for public recreational purposes under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 240425, an ordinance authorizing the Commissioner of Public Property on behalf of the City of Philadelphia to acquire a fee simple title or lesser real estate interest in all or a portion of a parcel or parcels of land from the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority, the Philadelphia Land Bank, and the Philadelphia Housing and Development Corporation, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 240431, an ordinance authorizing the Commissioner of Public Property on behalf of the city to acquire fee simple title or a lesser interest by purchase, dedication, donation, condemnation, agreement in lieu of condemnation, or otherwise, of certain parcels of land along the Delaware River in the Tacony-Holmesburg area for the purpose of making, enlarging, connecting, extending, operating, and maintaining public parks for recreational use under certain terms and conditions. And Bill number 240428, prohibiting the Commissioner of Public Property or any other official of the City of Philadelphia, known as the city, acting on behalf of the city from entering into, executing, or authorizing a lease, extension, lease amendment, lease renewal, or new agreement by and between the city and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for or on behalf of any Commonwealth department or agency at the property located at 2100 West Girard Avenue, all under certain terms and conditions.
Before I ask the clerk to call the first panel, would any of my colleagues like to make any comments? Mr. Clerk, will you please call the first panel? We have to testify this morning on bill number
Councilwoman.
I do have comments for
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, council colleagues, and to the Committee of Public Property and Public Works for your consideration of the priority bill bid bill. I have been advocating for this legislation for a year, and I want to thank Mayor Parker and the Law Department for drafting the bill. I also want to thank Council President Johnson for recognizing the key role community gardens play in our city and having me introduce the bill on his behalf. This legislation clarifies that the land bank has a priority bid for properties going through share of sale, a tool that is essential to get community gardens into the spaces of joy, education, food, and community. Protecting these gardens means a lot to me personally because I know firsthand the impact that they have on people and neighborhoods. In the absence of this official legislation, many of our community gardeners are considered squatters by the city. We have seen residents who have faced decades of disinvestments in our neighborhoods take the initiative to clean up abandoned lots and transform them into vibrant community spaces through gardening. These gardens have a plethora of benefits for our neighborhoods. A study by Dr. Gina South of the University of Pennsylvania showed that cleaning and greening vacant lots reduce crime by 29%. These gardens also provide green space and fresh food in neighborhoods that often have very limited access to these things. The gardens also give our children a place to explore their interests in nature and in science. Far from being a squatter, these residents are some of the untold heroes and sheroes that have helped bring healing to neglected communities. We need to make these legal and make sure they remain in the hands of the individuals who have been caring for them for years. 2 weeks ago, we held a hearing on urban agriculture, and at the hearing, we saw the people power behind the movement to restore community gardens to rightful ownership, so they can continue to benefit our Black and brown neighborhoods. Dozens of gardeners turned out and testified about the importance of their community gardens. And by the end of the day, the whole building was talking about it. It was one of the most well-attended hearings that we've had this session, and a beautiful presentation of people power in action. And I know this because a couple of my colleagues complimented the work that went into the hearing and even stopped by just to listen in. If you were not able to attend, gardeners from across the city spoke about the joy these gardens inspire in their neighborhoods. And as I have built support for this initiative, I've also seen how these gardens spark joy for myself. I have spent a couple of years touring community gardens and hearing from those involved about all the wonderful programs and opportunities they provide. It has inspired me to get active in my own garden, where I've learned to find peace in the simple act of digging in the dirt and bringing plants to life. These gardens are one of our city's best resources, and the bill we're discussing today will ensure they remain that way. We have hundreds of these spaces all over our city, and 70% of them are in high-poverty neighborhoods, where the majority of the residents are people of color. But as the property values rise, the threat to these gardens is growing. Philadelphia used to be home to over 500 gardens, but over the past 25 years, we've lost a third of those gardens. Once the land is sold, we never get it back, and we lose the opportunity to make Philadelphia a greener, more beautiful city for our children. As lawmakers, it is our responsibility to protect these community spaces and to support the people who care for them. This is an environmental issue, a public safety issue, and a racial justice issue. By passing the priority bill out of this hearing, we will continue the progress our city has made in returning ownership of this land from the big banks to our neighbors. Thank you, and I look forward to today's testimony.
Can you hear me now? Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember. Will the clerk please call the panel for the first panel for bill number 240187?
The first panel will be Angel Rodriguez, Mike Moran, Jennifer Greenberg, Mimi McKenzie, Garrett O'Dwyer.
Good morning. Good morning. Please state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Good morning. My name is Angel Rodriguez. I am the Executive Director of the Philadelphia Land Bank. Good morning, Honorable Chairperson and members of the committee. I'm here to speak in support of Bill number 240187, which amends Chapter 16700 of the Philadelphia Code entitled the Philadelphia Land Bank. This bill would allow interested parties to require open bidding when the land bank seeks to exercise its priority authority to acquire property at a sheriff's sale and allow prior owners to redeem property when such special authority is exercised, all under certain terms and conditions. The purpose of this ordinance is to create a certain mandatory processes in connection with tax sales that will allow the Philadelphia Land Bank to lawfully exercise its priority bid under the state law. The administration, city solicitor, and the Philadelphia Land Bank introduced this bill so that the land bank can resume fulfilling an important part of its intended mission, which is returning tax delinquent, vacant, underutilized property back to productive use. Honorable Chairperson and members of the committee, I respectfully request favorable consideration of Bill number 240187 and would also ask the suspension of the council rules to allow first reading on May 23rd, 2024. Thank you. Okay.
If it's okay, we're going to ask everyone that testifies to stay on this side, and at the end of the panel, then we'll ask questions.
So my name is Michael Moran, and I'm here representing Iglesias Garden. Do I begin my testimony? Yeah, okay. All right, so good morning, everyone. I appreciate the time. As I stated, I'm here representing Iglesias Garden, and today I will submit our organization's verbal testimony in support of Bill 240187, legislation that will grant priority bid to the Philadelphia Land Bank. I'm here today to express our support for this bill because we believe it will allow the land bank to serve the community in a more productive manner and facilitate important functions of its mission, such as protecting community green spaces from being lost at sheriff sales and supporting community-focused land development. For decades before even the land bank existed, local residents have returned vacant land to productive use, while profit-motivated developers are currently purchasing and being awarded dozens of lots to gentrify whole neighborhoods. Longtime residents and gardeners are still waiting for land security tied up in red tape. The reality is that our invitation to develop our communities usually comes in the form of sheriff sale announcements. A core belief at Iglesias Garden is that land sovereignty is essential to the foundation of truly empowering communities. We are a multicultural nonprofit made up of neighbors, caretakers, educators, artists, entrepreneurs, elders, and the youth, and so on. Yet with all these skill sets combined, we have struggled to navigate the process to save green spaces threatened by sheriff sales and the U.S. bank liens. As a collective, and with the support of many in this room, last year we made some progress in that struggle through intense organizing that raised awareness, which encouraged City Council to step in and allocate funds to secure and buy some of these distressed properties. We often discuss generational wealth through land ownership, but let's also include generational well-being and good health through preserving community green spaces. Without this legislation, we won't be able to complete the work to protect dozens of community-controlled parcels from being lost to profit-driven developers. We ask the City Council to support the longtime residents and future generations by passing this bill. Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson Lozada, Vice Chair Squilla, and members of the Public Properties and Public Works Committee. Thanks for the opportunity to speak in support of Bill 240187 to allow Philadelphia Land Bank to exercise its right to be sole bidder at tax sale under the conditions outlined in the bill. My name is Jenny Greenberg. I serve as Executive Director of the Neighborhood Gardens Trust, Philadelphia's land trust for the protection of community gardens and shared green spaces. Across the city for decades, self-organized groups of residents and nonprofits have responded to abandoned properties in their neighborhoods by taking matters into their own hands, transforming neglected lots into places of community strength, healing, and reliance. These residents act out of love, community, and commitment to their community, investing their own time and money to transform what is often considered a public nuisance into a community asset. Just to echo some of the statistics Councilmember Brooks cited, close to 70% of community gardens and farms in Philadelphia are in high-poverty neighborhoods and service sources of healthy food, safe green space, relief from summer heat, and respite from the stresses of urban life. Studies from the University of Pennsylvania have documented that cleaning and greening vacant lots reduces gun violence by 29% and significantly improves mental and physical health of nearby residents, including a 69% reduction in feelings of depression. Despite these and other proven benefits, upwards of 200 gardens and farms face an existential threat because the people caring for them do not have legal land tenure. NGT's mission is to address this by acquiring title for the gardens and holding ownership in perpetuity for the community's use as green space so they can't be lost to development. We've been able to preserve 53 gardens to date and are working with 30 more threatened gardens that have asked for our help. Once NGT acquires a garden, we can provide insurance and support stewards on the ground to troubleshoot challenges that arise. We work with Pennsylvania Horticultural Society to provide technical support, supplies, materials, and infrastructure. Community gardens often comprise multiple parcels with different owners. To protect a single garden, we often assemble land held by the various city landholding agencies and private property owners. The toughest are gardens located on abandoned tax-delinquent land where the owner is deceased or can't be located. These keep us up at night because of the frequency with which they flip to developers. The land bank's ability to exercise priority bid at sheriff's sale is crucial to bringing longtime abandoned properties back into city control. We've seen how this process can work successfully. NGT was able to preserve the Five Loaves to Fish Garden at 55th and Jefferson after Land Bank acquired key parcels as sole bidder at tax sale, cleared title, and transferred them into our protection. It's essential that the land bank be able to resume acquisitions, that it has the resources to scale up the number and pace. If not, the city will continue to lose gardens, and we will continue to scramble to save them when they're acquired by developers. The Growing Homes Garden in the 1st District, Emerald Street Community Farm in the 7th District, and New Jerusalem, now Peace Garden in the 5th, are just a few that would have been bulldozed and built on in the past few years if we'd not been able to purchase the land or do land swaps with developers. To protect and amplify all the good that gardens and farms do, we need a less reactive, more scalable and equitable strategy. With cooperative working partnerships between community and city, we can streamline fair and transparent pathways to garden preservation. The city took a major step in this direction when it invested over $1 million last year to clear liens owed to U.S. Bank that encumbered 90 garden properties. For years, U.S. Bank liens were the single biggest threat to gardens because the bank was sending them rapidly to sheriff's sale and refused to stop or negotiate with us. This was a huge step and an important one, but just the first step. The properties are still privately owned. Now the land bank must prioritize acquiring them. I cannot emphasize enough the urgency to do so. Further, once the land bank acquires the gardens, it then must prioritize their disposition, so NGT and other community-based groups can hold title and support the spaces long-term. I want to flag that there's a breakdown in the system for garden disposition that also must be addressed. The way the 2019 disposition policy has been interpreted and implemented has had a crippling effect. Between 2015 and 2019, NGT acquired 44 parcels at 13 gardens from city landholding agencies. But since 2020, we haven't been able to acquire a single lot. We have pending applications for land at 10 gardens that date back many years. Gardens in Department of Public Properties inventory that were approved by City Council to be conveyed more than 5 years ago have never gone to settlement or even been transferred into the land bank. This breakdown needs to be fixed so we can support and invest in these precious green spaces. It's extremely stressful for the gardeners who've been in limbo for years with no clear information or certainty for the future of the gardens into which they have invested so much over years and decades. Thank you, and I look forward to continuing to work with you on this important issue.
Good morning. I'm Mimi McKenzie, the legal director at the Public Interest Law Center. For over 50 years, the Law Center has been advancing the civil, social, and economic rights of communities in the Philadelphia region facing discrimination, inequality, and poverty. Some folks are surprised that a civil rights organization that overturned Pennsylvania's gerrymandered congressional map in 2018, that recently had our system of public education funding declared unconstitutional, also advances our mission by preserving community gardens and green space. But these spaces are critical anchors in Philadelphia's Black and brown neighborhoods. They are a place for residents to come together to grow food, to seek shade and peace, and to gather and play. Peer-reviewed studies back up what we all intuitively know to be true. Urban gardens and green space have significant impacts on public health. They increase community access to fresh produce and improve neighbors' mental and physical health. They improve air quality, a critical function given that Philadelphia's children have more than triple the rates of asthma compared to other children around the country. Cleaning and greening vacant properties results in significant reductions in gun violence and overall crime. And gardens and green space help alleviate the impacts of climate change by creating cooling effects in blocks otherwise densely packed with concrete buildings. But many of these vital gardens and green space are on land that is not secure. By that I mean the neighborhood residents who are stewarding the land, in some cases for decades, do not have legal title to the land. Many of these gardens are on parcels that are privately owned and tax delinquent. That puts the gardens at risk of being lost at a tax foreclosure sale or to developers or real estate speculators. The Law Center provides pro bono legal representation to nonprofit gardens seeking legal access to land that they've been maintaining. On occasion, we can quiet title for a garden client by filing a lawsuit against long-absent owners using adverse possession. For example, in 2018, our client New Jerusalem Laura, a nonprofit addiction treatment and recovery center in North Philadelphia, run by 2 non-denominational nuns, was able to use adverse possession to obtain clear title to 2 vacant parcels it's been using for over 2 decades to grow food for its residents and neighborhood children. But many more organizations and communities doing similar work with excellent results are struggling to preserve their gardens because we're not able to meet the required threshold of 21 continuous years of adverse, actual, exclusive, visible possession. Here, the land bank plays a critical role, and it's why the Law Center, collaborating with stakeholders, actively sought and supported the creation of the land bank in 2013. The land bank can acquire these tax delinquent and long abandoned properties at sheriff's sale by using its priority bid and then returning the parcels to productive use. Ordinarily, tax delinquent parcels are sold at sheriff's sale to the highest bidder. In lower income neighborhoods, these parcels often have low minimum bids and are attractive to speculators who, after obtaining the parcel, make no investment in maintenance, fail to pay taxes, and perpetuate the cycle of delinquency. Bill number 240187 ensures that the land bank will continue to be able to use its priority bid to exercise its right under certain conditions to be the sole bidder at these tax sales and break this cycle. As you're aware, the city recently made a substantial financial investment to ensure that 90 garden parcels in primarily Black and brown neighborhoods will be protected from sheriff's sale by clearing liens held by U.S. Bank. Now we need to ensure that the land bank, the administration, and city council can finish the job by foreclosing on these properties, having the land bank exercise its priority bid, clearing title, and ultimately transferring these parcels to their longtime stewards for nominal disposition fees. Ensuring that the land bank can continue to use its priority bid is one important step. But just last Friday, the Philadelphia Housing Development Corporation released its 2023 annual report. PhD reports that since 2021, the land bank has moved forward with only 12 garden dispositions. Currently, there are 59 active applications for community gardens that have not gone to settlement. Like affordable housing, gardens and green space keep neighborhoods intact, equitable, and sustainable. Going forward, the city must include the disposition of land for gardens and green space in its land use priorities, consistent with the spirit and letter of the Philadelphia Land Bank law we all worked so hard to enact. Thank you for giving the Law Center the opportunity to testify today in support of Bill 240187 and in support of Philadelphia's community gardens and green space.
Thank you for your testimony.
Good morning, Chairperson Lozada, Vice Chair Squilla, and members of City Council's Committee on Public Property and Public Works. My name is Garrett O'Dwyer, and I am the Associate Policy Director at the Philadelphia Association of Community Development Corporations, or PACDC. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this morning to support Bill number 240187, which seeks to align the tax-delinquent property acquisition powers and responsibilities of the Philadelphia Land Bank with Commonwealth judicial decisions. Since 1992, PACDC has been working alongside our CDC members to address the pressing problems facing Philadelphia's neighborhoods. In that time, few issues have been as intractable as the vacant property crisis facing our communities, particularly low-income communities of color. These parcels are a blight that lower surrounding property values, promote crime, harm health, and tear at the fabric of our neighborhoods. Moreover, each of these vacant properties represents a lost opportunity in addition to the harms caused. These properties could be generating much-needed tax revenue for our schools and city services while providing a home for families in need. They could be a small business supporting neighborhood jobs and the local economy. Or they could be a community garden providing healthy foods and an opportunity for neighbors to grow together, or any other myriad forms of productive reuse. This is why over a decade ago, PACDC played a lead role in organizing the Philadelphia Land Bank Alliance to push for the creation of the Philadelphia Land Bank to correct the failures of the existing vacant property management system. Advocates demanded a predictable, efficient, transparent, accountable, and equitable process. To date, the results have been uneven, and much remains to be done to secure the land bank that we envisioned. That is why we joined with six members of City Council, including many members of this committee, in releasing an early April statement calling for a review of land bank policies and procedures. Bill number 240187 represents an important step in addressing a major problem: the inability of the land bank to use its powers to acquire tax-delinquent properties. It is our hope that this will allow for acquisitions to begin as soon as the Sheriff's Office resumes tax foreclosure sales. However, now is also an opportunity for the city to be bold and develop a thoughtful, forward-looking acquisition policy. Transformative neighborhood development, like affordable housing, requires large parcels of land to build upon. However, given the still fragmented ownership of much of the city's vacant property, a thorough analysis must be conducted to determine where these opportunities are to strategically acquire properties to assemble larger sites and to ensure that these sites aren't mistakenly sold off piecemeal. We look forward to working with City Council and the administration to ensure the implementation of today's legislation yields the best results for Philadelphia. Again, we're excited to support Bill number 240187, and thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Before I open up for questions, I just want to say that I am a product of being in a family of community gardens. My grandmom took care of 8 gardens. She raised 14 children through those gardens, over a dozen grandchildren and great-grandchildren through those gardens. I watched her bring community residents together through those gardens. I saw her work with her community, bring her community together to be able to put fresh food on our dinner table through community gardens. And I say that to say that I understand the frustration, I understand the importance, and I am grateful for all of the work that people like Iglesias Gardens and Councilmember Brooks and her team have done, the work that they have done in order to bring attention to community gardens and the importance of them in neighborhoods, in poor neighborhoods especially. So just wanted to say thank you. Are there any questions from the committee members? The chair recognizes Councilmember Squilla.
This is a question for the land bank, I guess, Angel. During the disposition policy, sometimes there were some challenges on how land is disposed. Is there something that we could change in our land disposition policy that would then make it easier to be able to either get a garden out to sale or out to use, or to be able to swap a parcel that is a private property in the middle of a currently used garden, so that we could then swap a parcel out so that we can make the garden whole again before being able to dispose of it?
Certainly.
Before you respond, I'd like to recognize Councilmember Jamie Garcia for a point of reference.
I wanted to offer a point of information, and that's part of the difficulty is that our current interpretation of the disposition policy is asking gardens to take on a 30-year mortgage. So it's very prohibitive to being able to do these dispositions in the city. So that's a big part of the challenge that we've been trying to work around.
So I'll take your last point first. Land swaps aren't in the disposition policy. So if land swaps were in the disposition policy, it would allow us to actually have a codified process. How do we determine what properties are to be swapped and then do that? But currently, land swaps aren't an option. So
would that be up to us?
yeah, that's a legislative change. So let me just state that to the point that Councilperson Gautier was mentioning, prior to January 1st, 2020, when the disposition policy was changed, prior to that, garden dispositions were a nominal transaction. Under the current, from 2017 to 2019, December 31st, garden disposition, as long as you were a nonprofit, it was considered, you triggered the discount piece. So it was a nominal transaction. Nonprofit was just supposed to pay for the closing costs, and that's why you saw a big spike, early on, up until 2019, and then a drop-off because the disposition policy changed, asking for a mortgage to be placed and revestment policies. That's in the disposition policy currently, and then there's also an interpretation from the last administration when they issued an executive order also layering other issues that the Commissioner of Public Property have to address, and that also got expanded to the Redevelopment Authority and the Land Bank. So those are issues in terms of transfers. I only bring that up because currently the city of Philadelphia is still the largest landholder of all the agencies.
And the reason is, obviously, as we've been going through this for years, we were able to dispose of them earlier. Now, that recommendation and the land disposition policy that we have, was that done to put protections in place? What was the whole point of that? Because it did make it more difficult for us to move these properties.
Back in 2018 and other times with city properties, there were certain stories of people flipping side yards and gardens. I'm not saying that this group, but the legislation was reactive.
Protect us from ourselves, is that what you're saying?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think the city was, you also have to understand that from 2015 till now, vacant land has appreciated like exponentially. So it used to be a side yard. The initial, in 2015, if you looked at the side yard disposition policy, properties were assessed at $35,000. In which case, the intrinsic value of the vacant land wasn't high. It did cost the city more money to maintain it through PHS, CLIP, and all of that. So the side yard program and garden programs were there to defray the cost to the city to maintain vacant land, which is a liability. What happened during that time period is that the appreciable value of a lot of this vacant land in certain districts has tripled. I mean, right now, I'd have to tell you it's like $100,000 to $150,000 for a vacant lot. The properties have gotten a lot more valuable. So, and again, when you put out a policy, it's much more, you're trying to address everybody who would try to utilize that use, and it was determined that the city needed to protect the asset so that you didn't see properties being flipped.
But is this an interpretation thing, or is it
No,
actually?
there's an executive order from the previous administration, plus there's
Well, executive
conditional
order is not-
there's conditional language in the current disposition policy. It says either or, so that makes it conditional. When you couple that with the executive order, it no longer becomes conditional. And we asked for a legal opinion. That executive order survives the previous administration. So that's where we're at in this situation.
So would there be recommendations to council on possible language change or legislation that would make it more clear so it's not an interpretation or?
Certainly.
And I think maybe, I know with a lot of our colleagues, I think that would be something.
Yes, trust me, we live with these policies every day. We have recommendations. One thing I will say too is in 2020, the disposition policy was attached to the ordinance. So now you have it as a rule of law, whereas the recommendation was not to put the disposition policy in the ordinance, therefore allowing flexibility for practical use and implementation of the policy. So those are fundamental issues that have to be addressed in the legislation.
And it's something that the land bank be willing to work with
Oh, certainly.
us to make sure that we do that, and therefore, because it does become a big boondoggle, as you know, trying to move some of these
It certainly
properties
is.
through. The land bank was supposed to be to expedite the process.
I agree. I think the other issue, which other members of the group that have testified, one other issue is the transfer of title from different agencies. It does take quite a bit, and I know the council members here have seen our resolutions come in on a monthly basis, transferring properties from one agency to the next just to do disposition. And that impacts all dispositions, affordable housing plus open space.
Right.
So.
Yeah, all right, well, thank you. I'm looking forward to continue working with you on that and hopefully having legislation that would streamline this process to make it easier. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Garcia.
I just want to be on record expressing my frustration about this issue. We've been working around this, to my knowledge, for over a year now, and I think that when you prioritize something and when you want to get to yes, you find a way to do that. And that's not what I've seen on this garden issue. You know, there are a lot of big players in this city that we allow to get incentives and benefits without the same amount of rigor that we want to put on neighborhood folks like Councilmember, like Councilmember Ketsy's grandmom, or, you know, other people in our community that are just trying to operate a community space. We approve KOZs, we approve all kinds of benefits with noble causes for the economic growth of our city, but if we value what gardeners are doing, then we would place the same emphasis on getting to yes. So I just don't buy the explanation, and I think that if we care about this issue as much as we have professed, that we'll find a way to make it work.
I also have I have a question about these restrictions that we're putting on the applicants. Are we taking into consideration the amount of sweat equity that they have invested, right? Yes, this land over time has increased in value, but have we respected the amount, the financial burden that they have taken on in order to clean up these spaces, to protect these spaces, to revitalize them so that their neighborhood is not blighted? Are we taking that into consideration when we're putting these policies and all of these other restrictions in place for residents. Are we doing that?
No, sweat equity isn't like factored into the valuation of the property because all of them are nominal transactions. The issue here is what is the value of the property and what will be the mortgage amount. It's still a nominal transaction, so we convey it out for $1. And it's not that there's, the use is an allowable use. The issue now is whether it's a mortgage is being attached to it.
Yeah, I think that's a little disrespectful to residents, right? They have taken on the responsibility of ensuring that these spaces are clean and they're safe and that they prevent from crime from happening in their neighborhood, right? And so, again, I speak from experience. No one over the course of 25, 30 years that my family, my grandmom took care of a lot, no one came to say to her, here's a reimbursement, right? Now, she passed away without ever getting disposition of those lots. Many people ate off of those lots. The city didn't have to invest or do anything to maintain those lots. But the fact that residents are not even, that their investment is not even being considered or respected we should really consider that when we're creating policy, right? When we're creating these processes in order to continue to encourage residents to take ownership of spaces like that in their community. And so I look forward to continuing the conversation and figuring out how we encourage residents to participate in this type of work, but also that we incentivize them and that we reimburse them for the investment that they've made. Are there any other questions? Chair recognizes Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you so much. So PHDC reported that since 2021, the Land Bank has moved forward with only 12 garden disposition, and there are 59 active applicants from community gardeners that have not gone to settlement. NGT, who you'll hear from later, has similar difficult experiences. I know that there are a lot of factors that lead to this problem, and some of them that my colleagues have also brought up. Can you tell us what do you think the city council should do or the city should do to break down these roadblocks from getting this property into the hands of the gardeners?
Well, I think the delay on some of these dispositions was the negotiation on the terms and consistent terms on the mortgage and the note. So the first issue was, should there be a mortgage and a note that required input from multiple departments? When that was determined, what's the form of the mortgage and the note? Just this past month, we had agreed to that. I know that the Land Bank is moving forward now that we have new language to get those projects to closing. So again, what I'll bring up is that the disposition policy prior to 2019 did not have a mortgage and a note in the policy, in the ordinance or the policy. It was a nominal transaction. Since then, and we're required to follow the ordinance, it requires a mortgage and a note. And the previous administration did issue another, layer of compliance that we have to follow. So this body, should it choose to revert back to 2019, our job is to follow that ordinance.
So after this legislation passes, what is the timeline that we can tell the gardeners and our constituents who reach out to us? What is the estimate for the titles of the bank lien properties, to be clear? And what is your estimate for when the gardens will be complete of this disposition process?
So you mean getting them to settlement?
Yeah,
Okay.
like the time for the titles to be clear from this property, and then, when can they expect to?
I would have to sit down with my legal team to get a firm number of dates, and I'd be more than happy to follow up with you as to what that timeline would be.
Yeah, it would be helpful, because, we have been working on this. Councilmember Gautier said a year. I think there might be 3 or so years in the making, and it would be nice to offer a timeline so we can,
Certainly.
kind of firm up or let the gardeners know what's next. So my team will be reaching out to see if we can get
Okay.
a timeline on record to be able to have for them. I have questions for other people, Mike, I have questions for you. Yes.
Come back up to the mic, yes.
Good morning. So I want you to talk about what has the impact for your garden? What has been the impact in your community around your particular garden that you're working in?
Well, I mean, you know, it's from all angles, right? It's multifaceted, right? Like, so I can speak to the, in a sense, the peace and serenity that comes to the neighborhood by having that as a central, you know, having the garden as a central point. But then, you know, just the effort that it takes to produce or protect that peace that we're creating, right? In terms of energy that we have to divert to one, in a sense, one burning fire to the other, if you will, just to protect, again, that peace and serenity. I think, yeah.
So can you tell me, like, how has the lack of land security impacted your garden and the work that you're able to accomplish?
That peace of mind, you know, nothing that we grow or build there has any real permanence until we own the land, right? If we can, you know, grow the most food or grow or build the biggest shed or whatever, but if that land is taken up from under us, then what have we done, you know, other than make a few memories, if you will.
Councilmember Lozada talked about investment. Can you tell us a little bit she talked about the sweat equity, and I thought about how many hours and time do you actually put in a garden? And do you have an estimate of like a financial investment that gardeners have done, particularly at your garden?
And so the number in terms of like what it's taken us to secure the land that we have? That's-
Like when you're working right now to
Yeah.
continue to take care of
Yeah,
your
yeah.
garden, how much
Yeah.
time do you put in and like the financial investment?
So I'll speak, you know, on my behalf,
On your
right?
behalf.
But let that serve as like a slice of a gardener's life, if you will, right? I haven't earned $1 doing any of this, and I've been in it for, I mean, if some of y'all have heard, in a sense, my life story. So essentially, personally, I've been dealing with 30 years of land insecurity. But now, just kind of focusing on the garden, this has been a 10-year journey, if you will. And I'm going to continue doing it, right? Because we're here and we're making progress. So that, for me, is the payment that you know, that I'm going to, in a sense, embrace or be thankful for. But overall, though, I'm in real estate myself, and it's a lot of work. It's an investment, you know, and it's one of these things where, like, I can sit here and say, you know, from my, in a sense, my small business or my involvement in real estate, I can expect that return because in a sense, that's a business format. Why can't I expect a return from a community format, right? Where I invest into the community, where we grow these gardens and create these spaces for people. We should all be enriched through that, right? In terms of community-wise and spiritually and mentally, et cetera. There's also, again, the peace of mind aspect, right? You know, these neighborhoods, they have a rough background, you know, and some of the reasons that we have vacant lots there now are because of those tough times, if you will. And, you know, now I have a son, he's a 9-year-old, and one of my concerns with him is my main concern is just watch, you know, look both ways when you cross the street because of that garden, right? He'll come out and he'll ask me, hey, Dad, can I go to the garden? Go on, buddy. At 9 years old, I feel that much at peace because of the amount of, in a sense, sweat equity, not only that I, but all my community members, right? All of my neighbors have contributed to this space. So I know that safety, in a sense, it's exponential in the sense that it crosses the street, you know, and it keeps expanding in that kind of way.
Thank you so much for your testimony, Mike.
I appreciate
Next,
it.
Jenny Greenberg. Thank you for coming out. You mentioned that between 2015 and 2019, the NGT acquired 44 parcels at 13 gardens from the city landholding agencies. But since 2020, we haven't been able to acquire a single lot. What is the impact of gardens not being able to acquire lots? And what does the city stand to lose if we do not quickly address this broken process?
Sure. Once we're able to secure title for a garden, we're able to insure it and to raise money to invest in the physical infrastructure, which really helps. We were just talking about the sweat equity. The gardeners are always going to be doing that hard work on the ground, but there are things we can do to enhance the infrastructure once we know the garden is preserved. Things like installing a dedicated water line, fencing, a tool shed, raised beds. We've been doing more and more work with like double high beds for aging gardeners, ADA accessible pathways, making sure the sidewalks are safe. I would say on average, once a garden's preserved, we'll often leverage $30,000 to $40,000 to invest to really just amplify the benefits that the garden can provide long-term. The amount of crops they're growing, the amount of, having a sitting area so people, after they weed their garden, they stay and hang around and talk to their neighbors at the garden. All of these investments kind of shape how people are able to benefit from the spaces.
Thank you so much. One other question for Mimi McKenzie. Are community gardeners able to navigate the process of protecting their gardens without legal advice or representation? And is this a process that is accessible to like normal Philadelphians who have other jobs and need to spend time working in their community gardens?
The Law Center would like nothing more than to have this process for community gardens be so user-friendly that we could shut down that part of our operation. But we're definitely not there at the moment. Just to give you a few examples, the application for a community garden to apply for a parcel, it's an application that's designed for developers. We get lots of questions from gardeners about, well, what does this mean? Do I have to answer this? Do I have to do this? There's no application for leases, right? Like not every garden, especially maybe a brand new garden, is ready to take on ownership. But a lease, would make a big difference, but there's not an application for that easily accessible. And then, of course, if and when you actually go through the process and you get to settlement, the documentation is, overwhelming, I think, for a lot of community members. And so we answer lots of questions about, like, this 30-year mortgage, the note, what does it mean? What's the liability? What are the risks? How do we navigate making sure we're not in violation of the mortgage terms and risk losing the land? So at the moment, there are lots of ways that the Law Center supports community gardeners and gardens, but I do think there's a lot more that could be done to make the process more accessible. The Law Center can always be there as a backstop, but it would be wonderful not to have to spend that kind of time when there's a way to make it more accessible.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Are there any other questions? There being none, will the clerk please call the first panel? We have to testify for bill number 240383.
For bill number 240383, we have Melissa Scott, Eric Fitzgerald Reed, Gretchen Clausing, Ramses Montes, Zarina Lomax, and Shelley Wolf.
Good morning. Thank you for being with us today. Please state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Melissa Scott, CIO for the city's Innovation and Technology Department.
Begin your testimony.
Verizon State Government Affairs. Did you hear that okay?
did.
Is that better? Eric Fitzgerald Reed, Verizon State Government Affairs for Pennsylvania.
Thank you for being with us. Begin your testimony.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Member Lozada, Vice Chair Squilla, and members of the Public Property and Public Works Committee. I am Melissa Scott, Chief Information Officer for the Office of Innovation and Technology. I am joined today by Steve Robinson, OIT's Chief of Staff, and members of the city's Law Department, Rachel Rosser, Senior Attorney, and John Gibson, Assistant City Solicitor. I am pleased to provide testimony on Bill 240383, the City of Philadelphia's Verizon's franchise agreement renewal. For background, the proposed Verizon franchise agreement is a renewal of a 2009 agreement that expired February 26, 2024, and has been extended to August 25, 2024. The legislation before you has a new renewal agreement of 5 years, which will ensure that Verizon will continue to provide cable video service to Philadelphia subscribers, while continuing to pay the city the maximum franchise fees permitted by federal law of 5% of gross revenues. I will go into more detail about the agreement itself. However, I did want to share one of the key highlights of this agreement, which is we will have the opportunity to purchase up to 1 gigabyte fiber broadband service for at least 183 recreation centers and other Philadelphia Parks and Rec locations, with all of these sites to be connected within 24 months. So how do we get to this agreement that is before you today for consideration? In accordance with federal law, traditional cable TV operations must negotiate franchise agreements with local governments, also known as local franchising authorities, or LFA, for access to government control rights of way for the installation and maintenance of the cable operator's system and infrastructure. In exchange for access to the right of ways, cable operators may pay franchise fees to the LFA and must meet conditions negotiated by the franchise agreement. After extensive negotiations spanning over the last 3 years, the city and Verizon have agreed on several major terms for renewal of the franchise agreement. The agreement is structured in 3 parts, consisting of 3 separate agreements. The first part is the cable franchise agreement, which includes franchise fees and the public education government support, also known as PEG. 2 separate agreements covering 2 institutional networks, also known as INET, the city is seeking to obtain from Verizon lit and dark fiber. Institutional networks generally means a system of dedicated fibers, coaxial cables, or wires constructed and maintained by an incumbent cable provider, in this case Verizon, which is reserved and dedicated for city non-commercial purposes. The franchise agreement consists of the following. The term. The proposed renewal franchise agreement is for a 5-year term. The franchise fees. The renewed franchise fees provides the maximum allowable franchise fees under federal law of 5% of total gross cable revenues. Historically, based on the last 5 years, Verizon franchise fees are anticipated to bring an average of $6.7 million into the general fund annually. There's also a $500K grant for OIT to fund technology initiatives associated with the use of dark fiber. Then we have the PEG support, where Verizon will provide the city with a total of $8 million in grants for PEG financial support to be paid in an annual installment over 5 years of $1.6 million per year. The city will determine, based on need, how to distribute the PEG payment among Philly CAM Public Access, School District Educational Access, and PHL 64 Governmental Access. The additional benefits are as follows. There's a managed service INET agreement. The city has negotiated terms in the proposed franchise agreement for two distinct INET agreements, a lit broadband and a dark fiber INET. The lit services provide the city the opportunity to purchase up to 1 gigabyte fiber broadband service for at least 183 recreation centers and other Philadelphia Parks and Recs locations, all sites to be connected within 24 months. Lit services provide the opportunity for access for community employment searches, access to online government services, continuing adult education, and support student academic enrichment. The dark fiber INET agreement means fiber optic infrastructure that is not yet lit or in current use by Verizon. The city, rather than Verizon, will purchase, maintain, and operate the equipment required to light the fiber for use by the city in city-related network access and communications. Verizon will continue to own and maintain the fiber. Dark fiber provides the opportunity for potentially up to 2,000 video cameras citywide, installing the cameras in high-crime, frequent gun violence, and illegal short dumping areas. Expanding the city's network, avoid the use of temporary makeshift wiring, stringing fiber cables on trees and poles along the Parkway and Fairmont Park during various events. So ultimately, this agreement is advantageous for all citizens of Philadelphia, and it addresses the growing importance of broadband connectivity and narrowing the disparity between individuals who have online access to information and resources and those who do not. The digital gap pertains to the inequity in technology and internet access, which can impede individuals and communities from fully engaging in contemporary economy and society. Broadband service is an influential instrument for bridging the digital gap and promoting development in major urban areas such as Philadelphia. By ensuring universal access to high-speed internet, we can foster a more equitable society and access to economic opportunity for all individuals. That concludes my testimony. We are available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Great. Good morning, Councilmember Lozada, acting as chair, obviously Vice Chair Squilla, and members of the Council, the Public Property and Public Works Committee. My name is Eric Fitzgerald Reed, and I lead Verizon's public policy and state government affairs here in Pennsylvania. I'm also joined by Marie Lasota, who is Verizon counsel, and also Paul Train, who is Verizon's external counsel as well. Today, I'm providing this testimony to express support for the renewal of Verizon's cable franchise in the city of Philadelphia, and this is in reference to Bill number 240383. This particular cable franchise is a 5-year agreement that begins upon the execution of the agreement by the parties this year and will run through 2029. This renewal allows Verizon to continue to provide cable television service throughout the entire city to all residential dwelling units, with the opportunity to provide cable service to businesses as well. One important facet of the overarching franchise renewal agreement is the opportunity to enhance broadband access and promote digital inclusion to communities throughout the city. Verizon will provide broadband internet access to 183 city-owned recreation centers within 2 years of the franchise effective date, and up to 261 additional city-owned properties at the city's discretion through an INET. institutional network agreement. The renewal franchise clearly makes the INET a material term of the renewal franchise, and as such, the INET is subject to all remedies of enforcement. These enforcement tools were required by the city to ensure Verizon's compliance in providing the INET services. The remedies in this franchise include a $3 million performance bond, liquidated damages of $1,000 a day, and up to revocation of this particular franchise. To put the speed and capabilities of these broadband connections at recreation centers into perspective, consider the use cases of these enhanced connections that will support an online experience for multiple users and devices connected to the network at the same time. This means that numerous students can access educational tools, easily stream videos, and download and upload assignments. Residents will be able to conduct telehealth consultations with their physicians or participate in remote job interviews. Additionally, robust connectivity from dark fiber optics provided by Verizon at the recreation centers can be used to support other city technology initiatives such as cameras and LED smart lighting for resident safety around city-owned corridors. Collectively, this partnership represents a unique opportunity to leverage broadband and technology assets to promote better outcomes in communities across the city. Broadband internet access at the recreation centers will cover all 10 city council districts, and the build-out period for the INET will be 2 years. The connectivity at the recreation centers will be available to residents on a rolling basis as they are completed, and at least 100 recreation centers will be completed within the first 12 months of this franchise. In addition to the benefits of the INET, there is also a $8 million in support from Verizon to fund PEG, Public Education and Government Access Channels. There is also a $500,000 technology grant to help fund city technology-focused initiatives, including public safety, digital equity, and smart city efforts. Under the terms of the cable franchise agreement, the city determines and has complete discretion over how these $8.5 million in funds will be used, not Verizon. Finally, Verizon is required to pay 5% of its gross video revenue to the city as part of the franchise renewal. These franchise fees will produce and provide millions of dollars in revenue to the city in each year of the franchise. I want to thank this committee and your colleagues on the council for your consideration of this franchise renewal. Verizon looks forward to partnering with the city on this unique effort to connect and enhance the digital lives of residents and communities throughout Philadelphia. Thank you, and we'll be available for questions as well.
Thank you for your testimony. And just like we did the other panel, I'll ask you guys to sit back and then bring the rest of those who are testifying, and we'll ask questions at the end. Gretchen.
Gretchen Clausing and Ramses Montez.
Good morning. My name is Gretchen Clausing. I'm the executive director of PhillyCam, the nonprofit that has proudly run Philadelphia's public access television station since we began cablecasting in 2009. Supporters of public access have a long and storied history of coming to this body to testify on the importance of public access and the vital role community media centers play in connecting us to one another through media making and sharing stories. I'm going off script a little bit just because it was so nice to be here this morning while you're talking about community gardens, because that kind of public access is similar to how we operate to community space. And when we were fighting for public access, we talked about it as an electronic park. So it just feels really fitting that we were here this morning along with community gardeners. Since we opened our doors, PhillyCam has trained over 4,000 people in media making and who have gone on to produce over 20,000 hours of hyperlocal television and radio programming. The broadcast content produced by our members is a powerful demonstration of how, with equitable access to educational opportunities, media-making tools, and distribution platforms, communities are able to tell important stories and share vital information to promote sustainable and healthy communities, celebrate arts and culture, and support organizations working for economic and social justice. PhillyCam and our colleagues operating Philadelphia's government and educational access channels work hard every day to ensure that these platforms contribute important information and bring unheard perspectives on critical issues into conversations that impact our city. But none of this would be possible without cable franchise agreements that include strong commitments to public, local government, and educational, the PEG channels. These agreements ensure that we have the critical funding necessary to support our services and guarantee that these companies serve the public interest by providing cable channels on their system's infrastructure, the same as any commercial channel. It is for this reason that I'm here to testify to support the Verizon franchise agreement outlined in Bill 240383. Franchise agreements dictate the terms in which telecom companies like Verizon and Comcast are able to use the public right-of-way to operate their business. In return, they commit to providing access to cable channels and funding for PEG channels, such as PhillyCam, PhillyGov TV, and the School District of Philadelphia's educational channel, PSTV. In this newly negotiated agreement, Verizon commits to pay $8 million over the term of this 5-year agreement. The franchise also includes the addition of 5 dedicated high-definition PEG channels for the PEG operators, and Verizon will pay $500,000 to a technology fund for digital equity efforts, smart city programs, and public safety initiatives, and other uses determined by the commissioner. We proudly support this agreement and thank Councilmember Lozada and Councilmember Squilla and all of you on the Public Property Committee, Mayor Cheryl Parker, OIT Chief of Staff, and all the others in OIT, the Law Department and City Solicitor Rachel Rosser for completing these negotiations on a positive note. It is a clear demonstration that the City of Philadelphia supports civic engagement and the role that public access media plays in strengthening our community. PhillyCam members are the lifeblood of our city's unique story. Our programs preserve and celebrate local culture, traditions, and history, providing a platform for your constituents to share and document their lives and foster a sense of identity and pride. More than ever, inclusive, participatory media is important as it enriches public discourse and strengthens democracy. Without the support of City Council and the City Administration, our members, many of them here, including PhillyCam staff at board, joining me today, would not be able to support the production and stories they love. And our city is a better place because of PhillyCam members are part of it. So thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your testimony.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name is Ramses Montez. I'm a PhillyCam member and youth instructor. I'm about 24 years old. So for almost a decade, right, so for a third of my life, my membership at PhillyCam has been a promise that I'll always have not just a place, but a community where I can create and feel safe. As a teenager, PhillyCam not only provided me with skills and opportunities that I applied today, I could go there and discuss ideas with adults that actually cared and took me seriously. And it was a place that I knew that I wouldn't face the same degree of judgment and scrutiny that I may face, like wearing these same clothes, walking down the street, you know? As a queer individual, like, especially as a teenager, it was, like, hard to just find anywhere where it was, like, all these, like, different, like, things trying to tell me like what I am, what I should be doing, and things like that. Moving forward in life, PhillyCam continued to provide me with experiences that help me find employment and just like support myself like psychologically as well as financially. I dropped out of college and I was like, I'm never gonna amount to anything in life. I'm never gonna do anything. And like just last year, I had like my first real journalism job, and I'm actually getting a degree now, and I'm doing all these wonderful and amazing things because people at PhillyCam were like, I don't believe that about you. I don't believe that you don't have anything to give. I don't believe that, you know, there's like that it's done, that you're over. You're only 19, you know? So yeah, and now that I'm older, now that, I have to take life more seriously, I'm about to be 25, I'm about to be 30, Philly Camp provides me kind of like, like I said, I was an instructor, right? So a couple months back, it just ended in March, I was teaching a radio show called Hear Us Out, right? And it was a bunch of like teenagers, just like me when I was like that age, when I was like 18, 19, and I was like kind of teaching them, and it really and that's really why I went back to college, because I was like, life isn't over. Like maybe the climate is gonna explode, but I can still do something, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, just like even me being 24, being exposed to these kids, it was amazing. And I get to teach classes from time to time in like Kensington, in the library, McVeigh Library, McPherson, I'm drawing, McPherson Library. And stuff like that. And it's just like amazing, not just like because it's like something to put on a resume, but it really actually improves my life. And it makes me feel like I live in Philly physically, So yeah, all that to say is I just hope that Philly Camp can continue being this sanctuary where Philadelphians from all walks of life can come together and make something beautiful happen.
Thank you for your testimony. Zahara and Shelley?
Zarina wasn't able to come, so it's just going to be Shelley. Thanks.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. Please state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Sorry. Good morning, council members. My name is Shelley Wolf. As a dedicated Philadelphia resident, I am grateful for the efforts of negotiating the renewal of the Verizon franchise agreement. Your commitment to this community and is truly very commendable in moving this forward. I currently serve as the executive director for PSTV, the educational channel for the School District of Philadelphia, and as the vice president of the board for Philly Cam. For the last 26 years, I have witnessed the profound effects of PEG Access community access centers across the country. These platforms are not just important, but they are critical to fostering democracy, transparency, workforce development, and community engagement, inspiring us all to do more in our community. Philly Cam, PSTV, and the other E&G lineups are more than just channels. They are lifelines to our community. They provide low-cost, free access to equipment, enrichment training, youth programs, internships, workforce development opportunities, and a platform for local voices. For an example, a recent Philly Cam video project on sexual abuse in the restaurant industry produced by Spanish speakers won a national award highlighting the importance of accessible media for marginalized communities. At PSTV, we too equip our youth with the digital industry experience and skills needed to shape our future leaders. One of our students recently had received the Gates Scholarship, and through that, they went on to pursue a career in education at NYU and is now taking on a doctorate at UPenn and provides credit to PSTV for her success while continuing to provide training to our young people. I have another student who was with us from the time he was in 9th grade, who I recently hired in the last year and a half to now go out and teach the students that as he once was in our Philadelphia school district, and giving back to the students in the classroom. PSTV also ensures transparency by covering our local school board meetings and working with over 1,000 students annually in the schools as well as outside at rec centers and other locations. So introducing them to these media careers and pathways with our partnerships with local educational institutions and industry partners, these enhance opportunities and career pathways, changing lives every day. Your support for the Verizon franchise renewal and agreement is an investment in our community. It sustains critical resources like Philly Cam and PSTV, along with the other E&G channels, helping us to bridge the technological divide and building a more equitable economy. Again, I want to thank you all for your time, your dedication, and unwavering support. We appreciate the work that you are doing to ensure that our students and our community members can come together and have their voices heard in a way that creates positive impact, not just for our community, but for our students. Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. I just have one question for Verizon that I want to put on the record. I'm really happy or excited about all of our rec centers being connected or having the opportunity to have connectivity because, you know, I think that it's no secret that when folks have the capacity to be able to connect, they are able to receive the necessary resources and connect with programs that would impact them and their quality of life. And so I'm really excited about all of that. There was, Melissa, in your testimony, you mentioned that there were going to be the 183 recreation centers would be able to have access over the course of 24 months and that there will be an additional 440 sites. But I think that there's some, Councilmember, was it you who said that there were maybe 200 additional? I just want to make sure that we're clear. Is it the 200 plus, or is it 400 plus additional sites that will be able to have, that will be able to provide connectivity to?
So the total altogether is 400 sites altogether. So it's
200.
Additional 200.
261, what was the number?
It's 261 additional centers, so
Yeah.
261 plus 183, 444.
440.
And then my only other question is, how will those sites, for the record, and I know that we had this conversation, and before I ask the question, let me just say thank you to everyone who has been involved in making sure that this agreement has gotten to where it is today. I know that I've only been here for about 16 months, and since I walked in the door, this agreement has been a topic of conversation, and so there's been a lot of conversations happening, a lot of negotiations happening, and I know that all of these decisions that have been made in the best interest of community residents, of programming, of workers, and for the city of Philadelphia. And so thank you to everybody that has done their part in making sure that we are where we are today. How will those sites be selected and prioritized? Will council have a say in those sites? Is it a decision that the administration will make? Have these decisions already been made? Can either of you speak to that?
Sure, I can speak to that. So basically, it's going to be two phases, and this is being driven by the engineering. So there's going to be some recreation centers that just need a light touch in terms of being ready for service, and there's others that will need, I'll say, a more intense focus or may need more love, so to speak. So that's how we made those determinations, purely based on the engineering. As I said, we're going to do this on a rolling basis. We'll have 100 of them in phase one, and it's going to, in phase one, community centers that are going to be lit with broadband service. It's going to be, like I said, based on the engineering, but it's across all 10 council districts. So we really wanted to be intentional about being careful about digital equity, making sure that every council district has at least some form of service at the centers that residents can use throughout the entire city.
Thank you. And as part of the agreement, as the work is being done, as the fiber optics are being laid, how will community residents be impacted in their neighborhoods? Residents are saying, you know, there's an agreement that's being discussed. If and when they come into our neighborhoods, will we be impacted as the work is being done?
Well, it really helps with the digital divide. A lot of residents actually don't have access to high broadband service, so this allows them the opportunity to go to the rec centers to complete educational activities. It provides the opportunity for seniors to go and be able to maybe something as simple as pay their bill online rather than coming all the way down into Center City. So it really extends the opportunity for programming, educational resources for our youth within the communities which they currently do not have access to.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilmember Driscoll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a question, I have a comment. I just want to congratulate Melissa and the OIT, your team. city's council, city's outside council. Eric, you know, your team and all that you've done. I know this has been a long process. I know we've had a lot of asks, but that's our job, right? And I think this is a model for public-private partnership. And I guess my final thought is let's get this thing done.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Harity.
I too want to commend you guys on putting this together. For me, it's about the kids and them having access to be able to do their homework in line with just like every other kid's doing. You know, people, we tend to take things for granted. Those of us who have internet access and not realizing that some people in our city, mostly in neighborhoods like mine, are not able to afford it. Now that we will be giving it to them, I think that it will bring the whole neighborhood up. It's amazing. You know, and I worked for Senator Street and traveled the state. It's amazing that there are places in the state of Pennsylvania where there is no broadband whatsoever. Yeah. And that just kind of shocked me when I found it out. So I'm glad to see that we're going through. I'm a big e-games person, even though I don't play them, but my kids do and other kids do. And they're able to get scholarships for Division I schools now and actually make money playing video games. And you know, I think we need more of that in the rec centers, and by doing this, we're going to be able to put more of that in our rec centers, because the bottom line is not every kid's into sports nowadays. I got a 300-pound 14-year-old at home. I'd love him to play football, but he wants nothing to do with it. But you give him a computer and he can do whatever you want. So, you know, we have to meet these kids where they're at, and this is part of that. So thank you guys, and thank you to the legal for working this out. And, you know, we appreciate you and look forward to moving this forward. But my one question is when you're putting in the systems, will there be disruptions to the park areas?
Could you just provide some clarity?
Putting lines, do you have to run lines and stuff through the fields or anything like that? Or?
We don't think there's going to be much disruption in terms of getting the infrastructure to the centers. I know that we're going to be working hand in hand to make sure we get the proper permits with the various permitting agencies. But at this time, we don't anticipate any disruptions to the rec center that may have other programming going on during this period.
And when's it going to start? Like, when's this?
Upon effective date of when the agreement is actually executed.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Janey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Similar comments. I just wanted to commend the admin and everyone involved, Verizon, PhillyCam, on reaching an agreement that's so beneficial for our community. You know, I'm grateful for the level of PEG grants. We love PhillyCam. We want to make sure that they continue to be supported. We also know that this funding supports Channel 64, so that means my dad can continue watching me on here. Hi, Dad. And it's really beneficial in terms of access for our community. And I love the rec center piece because rec centers should be places of recreation, but moreover should be places of opportunity. And that helps us to get there for our young people and beyond. So congratulations to everyone who worked on this. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning. Just a couple quick questions. Can you describe, I guess, some of the, describe what opportunities are out there or in what the PEG grants go toward, so folks know what type of things that are being funded?
So the PEG grant is divided into 3 areas. 800K goes to PhillyCam, 400 to the school district's television network, and then 400, the other 400 goes to PHL 64.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
For the 500K grant for use of associated with dark fiber use, can you describe to us what the city has in mind for that 500K?
So so the 500K can go to anything regarding dark fiber. So a great example of that would be 2026 events. I mentioned in my testimony, us hanging wires and trees and just having really not a great presentation to our city when we have guests come in. But it'll be a great opportunity for us to actually connect the dark fiber and have more of sustainable infrastructure in order to have connectivity during these various events.
Thank you. I want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues about, how thrilled we are that our rec centers will be, have access to broadband. But I do have a question about the capacity. I do recall that it's 1G per rec center. Could you tell us, or can you quantify like what that looks like, how many users at one time, the type of activities they can do at that particular rec center with that 1G?
Sure. So currently the rec centers actually have internet service, but their internet service is similar to, I give the example of a garden hose. This particular franchise agreement will robust into high-speed broadband service, which would be equivalent to a fire hydrant. So if you think about the pressure and water that is coming out of a water hose versus a fire hydrant, now you can have more individuals accessing the internet at higher speeds and higher rates. So you'll have less of those scenarios where they go in to use a computer and they can't access. Maybe it's something where it's a lot of students accessing a particular network. It will provide them the opportunity where all of them will be able to access it at one time. So we can always increase 1 gigabyte. We're according to the contract right now, they're going to install 1 gigabyte. But if there's any chance that we need to increase more, we do have the opportunity to do that as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other questions from the? Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Will the clerk please read the names of the first panel to testify this morning on bill number 240435?
The next panelist is Patrick Livingston, testifying on 240435.
I'd also like to, for the record, I'd also like to note that for bill number 240383, there was an amendment that was circulated as a simple clerical error amendment, just noting that a page was out of order. So I just want to make sure that there was a simple amendment made to that bill. Thank you for being with us this morning. Please state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Patrick Livingston. Good morning, Chairperson Lozada and members of the Committee of Public Property and Public Works. My name is Patrick Livingston. I'm the Real Estate Operations Administrator of the Department of Public Property, and I'm here to testify in favor of Bill number 240435, authorizing the Department of Public Property on behalf of the City of Philadelphia to acquire fee simple title or a lesser real estate interest to all or a portion of the land located at the property known as 121 to 25 East Chelton Avenue. On behalf of the Philadelphia Department of Public Health, DPP is requesting to purchase 121 to 25 East Chelton Ave for the expansion of Healthcare Center 9. The expansion would consist of installing an elevator on the side of the building for patient convenience and accessibility purposes. Our health centers provide primary care services directly when the private sector is unable or unwilling to do so, and it is important that we improve these facilities whenever possible. Deemed surplus and vacant, our partners over at SEPTA received board approval last month to convey these 3 parcels to the city. After a handful of years of pursuing these specific parcels, we are thrilled to have the opportunity to acquire 121 to 25 East Chelton Ave on behalf of PDPH to install a much-needed elevator. Pursuant to Section 16202 of the Home Rule Charter, I filed with the Chief Clerk of Council an independent appraisal of the value of such real estate. The Department of Public Property supports this measure, and accordingly, I respectfully ask that the City Council approve Bill number 240435. I'm requesting a suspension of all rules so as to allow for the first reading at the next session of council. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for this witness? Thank you for being with us today. Will the clerk please read the bill, or please call the panel for bill number 240303.
Next speaker for bill number 240303 is Noel Marconi.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairperson Lozada and members of the Streets and of the Public Property Committee. My name is Noel Marconi, and I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Streets. With me today is Tom Merrow, City Plans Officer for the City Plans Unit. I am here to offer testimony on bill number 240303, introduced by Chairperson Lozada. This bill authorizes acceptance of the grant to the city of 2 certain areas located on either side of Hunting Park Avenue and extending from a point approximately 345 feet east of Whitaker Avenue to a point approximately 186 feet further eastwardly therefrom as sloped easements. These slope easements are required to facilitate a Streets Department project to remove an existing bridge which carries Hunting Park Avenue over a former railroad line. The space underneath the bridge will be filled in and the roadway reconstructed with additional fill sloping up on either side to support and protect the roadway. This is an administration ordinance submitted by the Department of Streets. The Department of Streets supports this proposed ordinance and recommends it to the committee for favorable action. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions from any members of the committee? The chair recognizes Councilmember Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Who currently owns the land?
The land on either side of Hunting Park Avenue is currently owned by PECO, Philadelphia Electric Company.
And is there a fee the city will be paying for this easement?
That's still being worked out by the law department. My understanding is no, we're not going to pay anything for this.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the other members of this committee? Thank you so much for your testimony. Will the clerk please read the panel we have to testify today, bill number 240307.
The next speakers for
240370. And I'd like, for the record, to mention that we have received 2 letters in support of the renaming of West Oak Lane Library to Dwight Evans Library of West Oak Lane. One letter is from Congressman Brendan Boyle, and another letter is from Councilwoman Madeline Dean.
The next speakers for 240370 are Kelly Richards and Kim Lloyd.
Very good.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Please state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Kelly Richards, Free Library President and Director. Good morning, Chairperson Lozada and members of the Committee on Public Property and Public Works. My name is Kelly Richards, and I'm the President and Director of the Free Library of Philadelphia. I'm here today to testify in support of Bill number 240370, introduced by Councilman Phillips, that would rename West Oak Lane Library to Dwight Evans Library of West Oak Lane. As you know, West Oak Lane sits in the northwest region of Philadelphia. Today, it is one of our city's predominantly black middle-class communities with a rich history and a story of rebirth, diversity, and resilience. At the heart of its story is Congressman Dwight Evans, a native of North Philadelphia, a well-known champion of urban renewal, and a longtime community activist who worked hard to revitalize neighborhoods like West Oak Lane that have been disinvested for decades. Over the last 30 years, Evans has become an advocate for teachers, education, helping start the West Oak Lane Charter School, where thousands of kids, grades K through 8, have been taught and inspired. He is also a voice for the citizens experiencing food insecurity and was instrumental in bringing nearly 100 quality grocery options to underserved areas of our city. Remarkably, his efforts and approach were adopted by the Obama administration as a model to end food deserts nationwide. Dwight Evans has an impressive list of achievements worth recognizing that make him the most fitting candidate the renaming of West Oak Lane Library, like becoming the first African-American chairman of Pennsylvania's House Appropriations Committee. Designating his name to West Oak Lane Library would recognize his impact on our community and, more importantly, serve as an example and reminder of what diligence and activism can achieve for generations to come. For these reasons, I encourage you all to vote in favor of the proposed legislation and give West Oak Lane Library a name more representative of the surrounding community and its history. I welcome any questions from the committee, and thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Will you please state your name for the record and begin your testimony?
Good afternoon, Chair Lozada and committee members of the Public Property and Public Works. My name is Kimberly Lloyd, and I am President, CEO of Ogons Avenue Revitalization Corp., fondly known as ORC. I echo Mr. Kelly's sentiments in regards to Dwight Evans, but to add a little bit more in terms of his legacy and why that this committee should consider his renaming of the library to the Dwight Evans Library of West Oak Lane. Obviously, you know, in terms of his organization, ORC, founded over 41 years ago, it's not common for a CDC to still have the legacy that it has. We still continue to do the work in the community, and it really is his vision that is allowing us to do that. So again, I echo the sentiments that have already been put out there in terms of leaving his legacy and his name, particularly on the library in West Oak Lane, for all the work that he has done over time. And we also note that the Friends of the West Oak Lane Library also share these same sentiments. Thank you for allowing me to testify today.
Thank you so much. I'd like to also just say that I'm grateful for all of the work that Dwight Evans has done, not only to his district, but in the city of Philadelphia, and the many opportunities that he has made possible to others. He is an example of a leader who always has reached back and has provided guidance and support and mentorship to many to be able to follow a positive path. And so grateful for him and excited for this recognition to him. So thank you so much for the work in this. Are there any questions from members of the committee? The chair recognizes Councilmember Driscoll.
Just a quick comment. I actually served in the House of Representatives with Dwight Evans, and you know, I'm a big fan of what he's done for the city of Philadelphia. I just said to Councilman Squilla, generally I don't like naming anything after anyone that's still alive because things can still go south, as we've seen in some of the buildings we've named in the city, but you know, I'd make an exception for the congressman, so thank you for your support here.
The chair recognizes Councilmember Young.
Yeah, thank you. Just similar to Councilmember Driscoll, I just want to be able to give, put on a record my gratitude for Congressman Evans and want to be able to give him his flowers while he can still smell them. So I just want to be in support of this legislation. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will the clerk please read the names of the panel to testify this morning on bill number 240423?
The next panelist for bill number 240423 is Sarah Clark Stewart.
Good morning. Thank you for being with us this morning. Please state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Lozada and members of the Committee of the Public Property and Public Works. My name is Sarah Clark Stewart, and I'm the Trails and Transportation Manager for the Department of Streets. I'm here to testify in support of Bill number 240423, introduced by Councilmember Jones. Bill number 240423 allows the City of Philadelphia to acquire right-of-way land for the purposes of connecting and extending the Schuylkill River Trail by constructing the Wissahickon Gateway segment of the Schuylkill River Trail. Upon completion of construction, the right-of-way will be operated and maintained by the Philadelphia Streets Department. The proposed right-of-way runs between the Wissahickon Creek to the east, the Schuylkill River to the south, the Pencoid Bridge to the west, and Ridge Avenue and Main Street to the north. The proposed right-of-ways would be part of the larger circuit trail system in Philadelphia. This concludes my testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions on behalf of the committee? And you are also here to testify on bill number 240425.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Chairperson Lozada and members of the committee. Bill number 240425 would allow the City of Philadelphia to receive 2 parcels from the Philadelphia Redevelopment Authority, the Philadelphia Land Bank, and the Philadelphia Housing and Development Corporation for the purposes of building the Cobbs Creek Trail extension in the Eastwick neighborhood. The 2 parcels are 2444 Island Avenue and 7401 Wheeler Street. Upon completion of construction of the Cobbs Creek Trail extension, the 2 parcels will be operated and maintained by the Philadelphia Streets Department. The 2 parcels will become part of the larger circuit trail system in Philadelphia. And this concludes my testimony, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there questions from the members of the committee on this bill? The chair recognizes Councilmember Young.
Just a logistical question. Why would these be owned or maintained by the Streets Department versus the Department of Parks and Rec?
So in the most recent past, the Department of Streets has decided to take on the job of building the trail system out and then assuming the responsibility for maintenance.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're also here to testify on bill number 240431.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Bill number 2401 is introduced by Councilmember Driscoll. This would allow the City of Philadelphia to acquire right-of-way land for the purposes of connecting and extending the Delaware River Trail by constructing a trail in the Tacony-Holmesburg area. The proposed right-of-way runs between Princeton Avenue, Pennypack Path, the Delaware River, and State Road. Upon completion of construction, the right-of-way will be operated and maintained by the Philadelphia Streets Department. The proposed right-of-way will be acquired as part of this larger circuit trail system in Philadelphia. This concludes my testimony. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of the committee? There being none, will the clerk please read the names of the panel that are here to testify on bill number 240428?
Councilman, there are no speakers signed up for 240428, but we do have
I understand.
written. Yeah, we do have written testimony from David Wilson, Deputy Managing Director for General Services.
David?
I'd like to make a comment first, if you don't mind, council member.
The chair recognizes Councilmember Young.
Thank you. Colleagues, this bill, 240248, is a bill that I introduced that would prohibit the city from entering into a lease or extending any leases for a site at 2100 West Girard Avenue that, we are, particularly my office and members of the Fairmount community and other communities in North Philadelphia, just have some questions about that specific usage. And I think that, we put this bill in to have a substantive conversation with the administration on the property, rather than, putting in some kind of resolution or anything like that. We wanted to be able to talk substance. And I think it is unfortunate that the administration has chosen not to have someone come and testify on this bill, so members of the public can hear, members of that community can hear what the administration's position is in their community. And I am grateful that there are folks here who stuck around who want to give their testimony on the record. I just think that these folks are owed a conversation, a public conversation, a transparent conversation. And as your council member, that's what I tried to do by putting forth this legislation. So I just want that community to know, and all communities to know, that we're trying our best to get information and to communicate that back with you. So thank you all for coming today and being willing to testify on this.
Thank you. Clerk.
So we will now be opening to public comment, and the next speakers are Tim Butters, speaking on 240428, Teresa Hoberg, speaking on 240428, and Richie from PhillyCam, speaking on 240383.
Good afternoon, members of council. My name is Tim Butters. I am the president of the Fairmount Civic Association. I'm here to support the bill introduced by Councilman Young, 240428. The Fairmount Civic Association is a group of volunteers, and we represent the residents of Fairmount community. I agree with Councilman Young that what we want is more dialogue and transparency around the lease at the 2100 Girard facility. Currently we're concerned about the safety of the building, which has multiple violations at this time, and the impact on the neighboring communities, which include two direct schools, Girard College and the City School in Fairmount, and it's adjacent by a couple blocks to the Bache Martin Elementary School and Middle School, as well as St. Joseph's Prep. Since the facility has been expanded to include increased homeless services, we've had reports of increased drug use, increased drug paraphernalia and trash, including needles and baggies, overdoses, and these are things that we were not ready to be helping people with because we didn't know that it was coming. And maybe if we were more prepared, we had a dialogue with the city, we would be more prepared to help our community take on these challenges. Thank you for letting me talk to you guys.
Thank you. My name is Teresa Hoberg. I am a director of the Fairmount Civic Association and obviously a resident of Fairmount. I agree with what Tim Butters has said. My concern is also that in considering this lease, that it be structured, this is kind of our only avenue for dealing with the use of the property. We don't really have a legal avenue, so we're kind of counting on City Council to help structure the current and prospective use of this property. And that would include Obviously, putting in a use that has some controls on the population, which it does not seem to have at this point, and that it be a reputable operation. And also going forward, it's important that we bring in, to the extent that we have illegal activity happening on the streets, that we involve the police department, because that can be something that the operators of the property themselves cannot handle. It kind of falls outside their purview. So it needs to be a two-pronged issue. I also am hopeful that we don't just consider terminating the lease at the end of 2 years. It's only 2 years left. Because as I understand it, the state then has the opportunity to make a lease with somebody else or sell it to somebody else or enter into a contract with another provider that we may have even less control over. So I think it's in our benefit to work with the state to try to negotiate the terms of a lease and control the type of use and the operators of that facility that works both for their needs and also considers the community.
Thank you for your testimony. Other questions for the members of this committee? The chair recognizes Councilmember Young.
Thank you. And you know, these aren't questions that, you know, are for you two specifically, but I just wanted to put them on the record, you know, if in case there was someone here from the administration who was able to testify on this lease. Just a couple of questions about, you know, what are the services being offered at the site, right? Who are the providers of these services? You know, when were these providers selected? You know, will there be medically assisted treatment here at this site? You know, what is the census of the site? How many participants are at the site? How are you able to come to the site in the first place? You know, so just a few, I think, basic questions that the community members have that, you know, we definitely would like to see answered as we move forward with this process. And just for the community's understanding, you know, City Council's authority is to authorize leases that are for more than a year, right? And so in this particular case, if the mayor or if anyone decided, any folks from the city decided that, you know, we're going to just continue on a year-to-year basis, they also have that ability without coming to City Council. So I wanted to put that clear on the record. This legislation will only prevent the city from entering into any leases that are more than a year. So, you know, the administration does have the ability, like I said, to enter into, you know, leases at a smaller length of time. But I also hope that, you know, our state partners, you know, use their state prerogative, they like to throw that word around there, right? Because it's a state-owned facility. And so hopefully they will use some of their influence in trying to ensure that the community that they represent as well is, you know, being heard when it comes to the use of that state-owned facility. And so I just want to again thank you both for coming out to testify on this matter, just to give a sense of the sentiment of that community. And I know that it's something that is just new, right? Or, you know, hasn't been seen in that community in over 30 years, I'll say. And so we want to make sure that we have the ability to mitigate some of the negative issues that are that could potentially arise and that are arising in that community. Because as I stated yesterday at a hearing, people need treatment, people need service. No one is questioning that, no one is against that. I think that when you are placing that type of service in the community, you know, and there are negative quality of life things that happen, you know, a community should just be prepared to deal with those things and understanding that treatment is necessary. So I just want to again thank you for coming out for your testimony on this bill.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Clerk, are there any more residents or anyone here to testify?
Yes, I have Ritchie on behalf of Philicam for 240383. Is there a Ritchie in the room?
Good morning. Please state your name for the record and begin your testimony.
Sure, sorry. My name is Zoe Sanderson. I am a Fairmount resident. I'm in Councilman Young's district. I just wanted to echo what my neighbors and FCA board directors said. I appreciate you bringing this to the council's attention, and as a neighborhood, we sort of felt blindsided by this, and so we just want some transparency and communication about this facility, understanding that it's a necessity, but also hoping that we can have some discussion about what that means for our community. And we want to be helpful, but we also want to be informed. So going forward, I'm hoping that we can have like an open discussion with the administration on this particular issue for the sake of the community and for the city.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here
Thank you.
and sharing your testimony with us. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Are there any questions from any members of the committee for this? The chair recognizes Councilmember Young.
I just want to thank you for coming out and testifying today and waiting out this hearing on this legislation. And I look forward to working with you and the community members on trying to continue this dialogue to get information so we can, best work with the administration on, providing that service, but also making sure that the community is protected as well.
Great, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. There being no further questions from members of the committee and no further witnesses to testify on the bills before this committee today, I will ask if there is anyone else present in the hearing whose name we have failed to call and wishes to offer testimony on the bills being considered today. Hearing none, I want to thank the panels and the witnesses for their participation today. We value your advocacy. This concludes the public hearing of the committee. We will now go into public meeting to consider the actions to be taken on the bills before this committee today. We will now convene the public meeting. Mr. Cameron, will you please call the roll to take attendance of members? Members that are in attendance, will you please indicate that you are present when you hear your name is being called?
Madam Chair,
Present.
Vice Chair Squilla,
Present.
Member Gautier,
Present.
Member Driscoll, Member Harity, Member Young.
Thank you. A quorum is present, and we will now begin the public meeting. We will now move to amend Bill number 240383. The chair recognizes Councilmember Squilla for a motion on the amendment to Bill number 240383.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I offer an amendment to Bill number 240383. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to Bill number 240383 be approved.
Second. The chair notes for the record that Councilmember Jamie Garcia seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly second that the amendment to Bill number 240383 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it, and the amendment to Bill number 240383 has been approved. The chair recognizes the chair recognizes Councilmember Squilla for a single motion on bill numbers. All of these? Yes. All of these. 240383 as amended, 240187, 240435, 240303, 240370, 240423, 240425, 240431, 240428 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of these bills at our next session of council.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the bill number 240383 as amended, and bill number 240187, 240435, 240303, 240370, 240423, 240425, 420431, 240428 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of these bills at the next session of council.
The chair notes that for the record that Councilmember Young seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 240383 as amended, bill numbers 240187, 240435, 240303, 240370, 240423, 240425, 240431, 240428 as reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of these bills at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes carries. And the motion carries, right? And the motion is approved. This concludes the business before this Committee of Public Works and Public Property for today. Thank you all very much for your attendance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.